At 90 years old, Herb Simon represents a generation of owners who built franchises from nothing, and he's watching his life's work get frozen by people who weren't even born when he saved basketball in Indiana. In 1983, Simon and his brother Mel wrote an $11 million check to keep the Pacers from folding. 40 years later, Forbes values the Indiana Fever, the women's team Simon added in 2000, at $370 million. Before Caitlin Clark arrived, that number was $90 million. Simon's investment has quadrupled in 18 months. But 3 weeks ago, WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert walked into a room with the Players Union and made a deal that put everything on hold. Free agency frozen, expansion draft delayed. The man who saved basketball in Indiana twice couldn't do anything about it. He wasn't even in the room. To understand what Herb Simon stands to lose, you have to understand what he built and what he's planning to leave behind. In December 2023, Simon sold a 20% stake in Pacers Sports and Entertainment to billionaire Steven Rales. The deal valued the organization at $3.47 billion. Rales, a DePaul graduate with Indiana ties, got something else in the agreement: a possible path to control if the Simon family ever decides to sell. Simon is 90. He just retired from Simon Property Group last month after 65 years in real estate. His brother Mel died in 2009. The succession plan is in motion, and the centerpiece of that plan, the asset that's supposed to define the Simon legacy for the next generation, is Caitlin Clark. When the WNBA announced expansion in 1999, Simon saw an opportunity. He already owned the Pacers. Adding a women's team made business sense. But for Simon, it was also personal. "If I can hang around long enough," Simon said in 2021, "maybe we'll even win a championship." The Fever gave him that championship in 2012. Tamika Catchings led Indiana to its first and only title. Simon was there, 80 years old, watching a team he'd owned since its first game hoist the trophy. Now he's 90, and the window for another championship is right in front of him. Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Stephanie White, a $78 million practice facility opening in 2027. Then the league froze it all. Here's what Commissioner Engelbert and the Players Union are fighting over. Right now, the WNBA Supermax salary is $249,244. The league's latest offer would raise the maximum to $1 million in 2026, potentially $1.3 million with revenue sharing. Average salaries would jump from $120,000 to over $530,000. The minimum would rise from $67,000 to approximately $250,000. Those are historic numbers. Nobody disputes that players deserve more money. The new $2.2 billion media rights deal means there's money to share, but the two sides can't agree on how to split it. WNBPA President Nneka Ogwumike wants 30% of gross revenue, the total money before expenses. Engelbert is offering more than 70% of net revenue, what's left after the league pays for travel, facilities, medical care. The gap between those positions is $50 to $75 million per year. On January 9, 2026, the collective bargaining agreement expired. The league told every general manager to prepare qualifying offers. Get ready for free agency. 2 days later, Engelbert and Ogwumike announced a moratorium. Everything frozen. No warning to the owners. No input from the teams. Herb Simon's front office had plans. They had free agents to pursue. They had a championship roster to build. None of it can happen. Look at the moves Simon's organization made to compete for a title. After Clark's rookie year, the front office went to work. They brought back Kelly Krauskopf as team president, the same executive who built the 2012 championship roster. They hired Stephanie White as head coach. White played for the Fever from 2000 to 2004. She was an assistant when they won the title. She won WNBA Coach of the Year with Connecticut in 2023. This wasn't just a coaching hire, it was a homecoming. They signed veterans: DeWanna Bonner, Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham. They surrounded Clark and Boston with experience. Then Simon committed $78 million to a new performance center, 3 stories, 108,000 square feet, 2 regulation courts. That building breaks ground with Clark's name attached to it. The man didn't build all of this to watch it sit frozen while lawyers argue about revenue splits. The Fever have exactly 3 players under contract for 2026: Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and rookie Michaela Timpson. Everyone else is frozen in limbo. And they're not just sitting around waiting. Kelsey Mitchell, the woman who carried Indiana to the semifinals while Clark watched from the sideline, is currently playing for Hive BC in Unrivaled, the 3-on-3 league founded by WNBA players. Lexie Hull is there too, defending her championship from last season. Even Aaliyah Boston is competing for Phantom BC. These players have options now. They have leverage. They're showcasing their talents in Miami while their WNBA futures remain unsigned. The old days of players waiting by the phone for their team to call? Gone. Mitchell is the most urgent case. She averaged over 20 points per game last season. She carried the Fever through the playoffs after suffering from rhabdomyolysis, a serious muscle condition that sent her to the hospital during Game 5 against Las Vegas. Her father died unexpectedly last year. She talked in her exit interview about family, about figuring out what's best for the people she loves. She called Indiana her second family, but she didn't commit to returning. GM Amber Cox said publicly that keeping Mitchell was priority number one. The plan was to use the core player designation, like a franchise tag, exclusive negotiating rights for a one-year maximum contract. But the core designation is frozen, and Mitchell is in Miami, playing basketball, building relationships with players from other teams, and waiting for a league that can't tell her what her future looks like. Sophie Cunningham is a free agent. She said she wants to stay but can't not look at other opportunities. Every day the Fever can't negotiate is a day these players might drift somewhere else. It gets worse. Portland and Toronto are joining the WNBA in 2026. Both teams need players. The way expansion drafts work, every existing team protects a list of players, and everyone else becomes available. Last December, the Golden State Valkyries held their expansion draft. Teams protected 6 players each. The Valkyries picked one unprotected player from every roster and built a playoff team in year 1. That's the precedent. This year, ESPN is reporting teams will only get to protect 5 players. 2 new teams drafting means the league is tightening the screws. For Indiana, the math is brutal. Clark and Boston are protected. If the core designation rules survive, Mitchell gets that tag, 3 spots. Timpson is under contract, 4. 1 slot left. Sophie Cunningham or Lexie Hull? The sharpshooter or the defensive specialist? Stephanie White has to choose which one gets exposed to Portland and Toronto, and she has to make that choice without knowing the final rules. The expansion draft can't happen until there's a new CBA. Nobody knows when that will be. Here's what the league office doesn't seem to understand about Herb Simon. The man is 90 years old. He sold 20% of his organization to Steven Rales with a succession clause attached. His brother is gone. His health isn't going to improve. The championship window isn't going to stay open forever. Simon has been waiting for another Fever title since 2012. 13 years. He watched 7 straight losing seasons before Clark arrived. He kept investing anyway, because that's what owners who love their teams do. When other WNBA franchises struggled for attention, Simon kept the Fever stable. Same ownership since day one, same commitment to Indianapolis. Now it's paying off. Forbes has the Fever valued at $370 million, second only to the New York Liberty. The franchise generated $32 million in revenue last year, more than any other WNBA team. Clark's presence has quadrupled the franchise's worth in 18 months. And Simon can't do anything with it because Cathy Engelbert and Nneka Ogwumike can't agree on a revenue formula. They met yesterday, February 3rd, for the first time in weeks. 3 hours of negotiation with New York Liberty owners in the room. No deal, no timeline. Ogwumike walked out in the early afternoon with nothing resolved. The 2026 season is supposed to start May 8th. Training camp opens April 19th. The expansion draft hasn't happened. Free agency hasn't started. The CBA negotiations have no end date. Indiana opens the season May 9th against Paige Buchers and the Dallas Wings, a game that should showcase the future of women's basketball, the last 4 #1 picks on the same court. But Stephanie White might be fielding a roster of 3 players and whatever she can scramble together in a compressed free agency window. Meanwhile, Kelsey Mitchell plays in Miami. Lexie Hull defends her unrivaled title. The players have moved on to other opportunities while their WNBA futures wait for a deal that might not come for weeks. Herb Simon saved basketball in Indiana in 1983. He brought women's basketball to Indianapolis in 2000. He built a championship team in 2012. He planned his succession with Steven Rales, and he invested everything he has left in the Caitlin Clark era. 90 years old, Hall of Famer, longest tenured owner in the NBA, a $370 million franchise built from nothing. The man has earned the right to compete for a title. Instead, he's watching from the sideline while the commissioner and the union president make deals that determine his franchise's future. He wasn't consulted. He wasn't in the room. He just has to live with the consequences. That's the deal that got made behind Herb Simon's back. Not a conspiracy against Indiana, just a league that decided its labor dispute matters more than a 90-year-old man's last chance at a championship. The season starts in 3 months. The clock is running on Herb Simon, and nobody at league headquarters seems to be in any hurry.